Hello, my name is Tina Beattie. Welcome back to this series of conversations with women from around the world when I discuss with them their faith and hope, the meaning they give to life, and their experiences of resistance and struggle in this time of global crisis. On Sunday the 14th of June, I spoke by way of Zoom with Kochurani Abraham, speaking from Kerala in India. We discussed a wide range of issues, including the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic to people in India, particularly migrant workers and victims of gender-based violence. Kochurani also had some challenging and interesting things to say about the role of the Church during this time and the ways in which her Catholic faith has led her to consider and question many issues during the course of her life. Kochurani's book, Persisting Patriarchy, was published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2019. It's a fascinating study of Catholic women in her home region of Kerala and the ways in which they navigate complex conflicts between internalised religious teachings, which are often oppressive, and the opportunities afforded by a fairly egalitarian secular society. So welcome, Kochurani, and I'm delighted to be in conversation with you here.
Thank you, Tina. Good to be joining you in this conversations.
So, Kochurani, I just want to begin by asking you to tell us what life is like for you as a Catholic woman living in India today during the time of this global pandemic and all the struggles and challenges it poses to us.
For me, I find this last few months a very special time. In one sense, it is grace-filled, but on the other hand, you see the deep inequalities of Indian society coming to surface in its stark nakedness, which is sometimes frightening. Yeah. Because we know such social inequalities exist in India, particularly, when we began the lockdown, our Prime Minister announced a complete lockdown on the 24th of March at 8 p.m. And he said it would start at 12 midnight. Okay, so it was just a 4-hour notice for a complete lockdown. For those of us who have homes, it was the slogan sounded, stay home, stay safe, sounded very appealing. Because especially for those of us who were tired of traveling or, lying to work every day, it felt a good relief. But for me, what struck me very, very strongly in the first it still continues, the first few weeks to months, is the plight of migrant workers within India. In India, particularly from certain belts in the north of India, we have lots of migrant workers coming down to the south or to the cities like Bombay, Ahmedabad, major cities in India. For them, their home is far out, 1,500 kilometers far, far away in the villages. And they're all living in sheds, very, very, very poor housing provided by their small scale industrialists or agriculturalists. So for them, it was like, in 4 hours time, they have no work because it was lockdown and they have no place to go. Maybe their employers would support them for a few days, but then there was a whole frenzy of fear about the pandemic, that people could die anywhere. They're out of their homes, you have to get back. Government stopped overnight our public transport system, and it was really, really frightening, their plight. Many of them decided to walk back home, and walking back, it's not just 10 kilometers or 50 or even 100. Some even started walking back home 1,000 kilometers. I don't know if this news reached your part of the world, where 16 migrant workers, they had spend the night on railway tracks, and a goods train mowed them. They crushed them to death. And why they slept on railway tracks? It was not because they were silly, stupid, but the slum, the marshy areas around that where they were walking, the railway track was the only safe place where they could sleep, spend the night, because they could, there would be threat of snakes and other creatures. So this kind of, we have had, women who were 9 months pregnant walking on the highways and delivering on the roadside, carrying newborn babes, walking hundreds of kilometers. We've had a story of a young girl who was with her father in one city in the north of India, and her family and her father had an accident, and he had some leg injury. This girl cycled, keeping her father behind her, cycled 1,250 kilometers. All these are real life stories. So for me, the government, are they not human beings? Are they not Indians? Where is their home? For me, the home became a very big social question, economic question, but a theological question also. Where is home? Who belongs where? Where do we belong? Is my home just my blood relatives or the secure roof under which I am housed? Is my nation a home? Okay, so me, all these questions were very, very stark, very glaring, very painful, where you feel the burden of social suffering, of human suffering. Where I don't know if you read, Tina, I had written on the Maundy Thursday of this year, a small writer titled, "You Are Part of Me." I took that title from Jesus telling Peter, and Peter refused Jesus that you should wash my feet. Jesus says, if I don't wash you, you are no part of me. Okay, you are no part with me. For me, that caption, "Oh, you are part of me," hit me very strongly when we, felt the heat, the pain of the pandemic. Because for me, this COVID crisis, whether it started in the labs of Wuhan, as some would say, or the wet markets of China, Wuhan, for me, it is a sign of a pathology of the whole human ecosystem. I myself, to say something personal connected to this, about 20 years ago, I was going through a very strong crisis in my life. Okay, I was part of a religious order, and I was discerning the process of leaving. And I was in a very responsible position of being in charge of directing novices, what is the initial training period. So for me, the congregation had become my home. At the same time, my feminist theological sensibilities made me question very radically very many things connected with spirituality, connected with leadership, and I felt I could not continue. So when I was in the struggle of discernment, and it was a time I was the national coordinator of a project, and I had a lot of traveling, lot of work, less sleep. My body could not take it anymore. And you know what triggered in me? Arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. And for me, when the body starts speaking, you have to listen to the body. And I know I still have the arthritis, but I manage, I take care. Okay, I learned to take care. I learned to slow down in life. I learned to listen to the body. I learned to connect myself to the whole web of life. And what healed me was nature. So for me, when the COVID thing erupted, it is not just something, a virus. It is something that is telling us of a very strong imbalance of the human ecology, the whole system of life. Something is gravely wrong. And that wrong thing surfaces, something is gravely wrong in the way we humans relate to each other. Okay, that consciousness came to me very strongly once feminist sensibilities awakened in me. Okay, like for example, here in my home, I belong to the Syro Malabar Rite, which is one of the 3 Catholic rites in India. Okay, and this is a tradition of Saint Thomas having come to India and converted Brahmins, and we are descendants of that Brahminic uh, ancestry. I believed this blindly up to I was 20 or so. There was no thinking, a consciousness of me as a woman. I was completely within the mold, or a gendered mold, a caste mold, until something hit me, until something woke up in me, and I started thinking for myself. And I felt, how much lies do we build our life stories on, our identities on? And I started deconstructing things for myself. And then I felt, my God, first of all, Saint Thomas may not have come. And if at all he came, there were no caste communities in Kerala at that time. All this came to me very, very strongly when I started working on my doctoral research, because I took my home community there. So this kind of lies on which we have made those lies truths. We have normalized them. We have brought God into the picture. So I could see a lot of connections with caste hierarchies, gender hierarchies, even my own life being tangled by that and struggling to come out. That is why I put the title of my book, subtitle, Intersectionalities. Because I know in my own life story how much it is embedded in this intersectionalities. So in the plight of the migrant workers, the migrant women who were so badly affected by the lockdown, there is such an intersection of class and gender, which we have overlooked, So this kind of things hit me very strongly during the pandemic, which, things I knew, something is awfully wrong somewhere, but here, this kind of suffering, which is, and I can't say I have a home and, let them die on the road. We can't do that. So we have, you are familiar with the Indian Christian Women's Movement, no? We, in the national team, we wrote to the Prime Minister, asking him, a copy to the Home Minister of our country, asking him to take very stringent and urgent measures to address the plight of the migrant workers. Maybe our voices is a drop in the ocean, but we felt we had to do that because we couldn't be comfortable disconnected from their suffering. Even though I have a good home to sleep, I can, I don't, for me, I could see myself enjoying this time, lot of time to read and finish up my pending work. But can I disconnect myself from those who are part of me? Can I disconnect myself from the nature that is part of me? These are the questions which has really hit me hard, in this time.
What you say about migrant workers and what you say about the body being sick, I find that so wise and insightful. A sort of analogy, of course, it's not quite as desperate, but it's still pretty desperate, would be here in London. We have a lot of young people, a lot of people working here in the hospitality industry. Many of them are from different European countries, some of them are from further afield. And of course, when everything locked down here, these people suddenly had no jobs, no accommodation. People who have never lived on the streets are suddenly living on the streets in central London. They're very vulnerable to crime because there are people who have been living on the streets surviving for many years. So their mobile phones get stolen, they're at risk of being mugged, etc. But also people who live on the streets survive by eating food that restaurants dispose of and by begging from passers-by. There are no passers-by in lockdown. All the restaurants are shut. They can't even go anywhere to wash their hands. But how can you wash your hands when everywhere is closed? So they're in a really, really desperate plight. So thinking of that, though, one of the things that's been said and quickly challenged is that we're all equal in this. Of course we're not. And what you say, I resonate with. I have a beautiful environment to spend this time in, and I'm very comfortable. But how can we be truly comfortable and contented when we know what's just out there on the streets? I just want to come back to you, Kocharani, and say, really, what you've given us is a wonderful, wonderful picture of life in India, of gender issues, of the plight of the migrant workers. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Very connected to the pandemic, and I want to say something about gender violence here in India. Okay, I'm sure it is global that during the pandemic, domestic violence has increased. No? Like it was, our National Women's Commission had taken note of it. The World Health Organization has taken note of it. And in my reading of it, you know, women who are living in abusive homes, it has been a very, very suffocating situation. That is where I would connect to George Floyd and his last words, I can't breathe. You know, when women, at least like, you know, when you have, even if you have a very abusive relationship, if you have space to move around, to go out, okay? If you're living with an alcoholic husband and you have no space to move out, so to be contained within the four walls of a home for very many women has been extremely suffocating. So that you know, cry of George Floyd, I can't breathe, finds such an echo. And I find that, you know, in this kind of, we can theologize, and I have always felt in a Catholic tradition, which is highly clerical, I always told myself, I can't breathe, you know, I can't breathe. I need space to breathe, to think. I need that space. For me, maybe physically I will survive. I think, you know, something that is very striking of this whole very painful, tragic death of George Floyd, it's brought to surface the deep-rooted virus of racism still in the world. I wouldn't locate it only to the United States or the white world. Okay, we have. I always say in India, our casteism, our patriarchy, it's the same virus that is operative. It's exactly the same virus where somebody feels I have power over you. Okay, you are at my beck and call. You know, I can dictate terms to you. Even if I kill you, nobody will question me. So everything, you know, reading into that, the picture of this police officer pressing his knee on his neck, others watching as though nothing is happening. It's something very casual. I was trying to find its reflection in this part of the world, okay, where there is so much class oppression, where there's so much caste oppression, where there is so much gender oppression, where people say, give me little breathing space. It is very real. So just following these days, you know, how Afro-Americans or people who are in solidarity with them are even pulling down statues of great world leaders who have been accomplices either through their words or their silence. You know, they're trying to uproot the roots of this violence. And I was thinking, I was telling my feminist friends here, how much more we need to work to uproot this this virus of domination. And for me, that is the grace of COVID-19. Even though pandemic is very threatening, you can feel death around, it is telling us, become human, become egalitarian, consider the other form of life as part of you. Don't think you are somebody superior. Don't think you are, racially, ethnically, uh, gender, anything class wise. We have no superior, we have no we can't create that, we can't sustain that world order anymore. For me, that's a lesson. So this kind of, gendered violence, where women, not only from abuse, very many women, particularly those who have been comfortable having helpers to do the cooking and cleaning and all that, have been tied to what we call in India kitchenism. Kitchenism is cooking, cleaning, caring, which had been women's lot. I don't know whether maybe in the Western world this is not, the whole gendering of labor. So women, when they had to do everything, it has been again suffocating, They have no breathing space. They have no time to breathe. So much work, you know, dumped on them. So this kind of, things which we have to work, we have to uproot violence, gendered violence, which has so many expressions. That is one thing. A third thing which which has hit me, which is not resolved, is my whole experience of church, spirituality, faith. I can't say it is my personal experience, because I have taken in my trajectory of growing up, I have found my spiritual space, in the sense where, means of connecting to the divine in so many ways. But for a great majority of people who have been very domesticated to a church environment, who are not taught to think of Christian life beyond cultic life, beyond the ritual. So for them, lockdown has been very, very painful. And I can say, particularly in my state, Kerala, which is so strongly bound by this tradition of Christianity, which is highly, highly clericalized. Suddenly, we have many of our churches for daily masses, we have a good number of people attending daily masses. So suddenly, when the lockdown came, people were lost, particularly women. There is also a gender dimension to it, because women are the greatest consumers of religious products in my part of the country. They are the transmitters and consumers. So consumerism is a real problem here. So immediately what the church did, instead of, the church has not prepared people. So immediately they switched, overnight onto online relay of masses. So people who are daily mass goers suddenly got glued onto the TV. So it became TV mass. And then, some of us who have been thinking critically over this, we started writing, but our voices are nowhere. We are just, kind of a sand, tiny speck in this whole huge ocean. Then on the 8th of June, when the government was sort of face by face lifting up the lockdown, the whole first they eased out in the phase one, they eased out, kind of essential services, and then phase 3, 4. So when it came to June 8th, from March 25th, I think we were in phase 4 or phase 5. So they decided to ease down malls, restaurants, and places of worship. First of all, the grouping of these three itself is, for me, it's comedy. Malls, restaurants, and places of worship. And suddenly, in my home state, some dioceses, particularly this tradition, so desperate to open. And this is the time COVID has been, the spike in Kerala, which has had so much control over the disease. Since we've had, I think from the end of May, we've had a huge influx of non-resident Keralites returning to Kerala, and many of them have been carriers of the virus, particularly from Gulf countries. Okay, so on one hand, the rate of the spread has been drastically increasing, and on the other hand, when the government eased down, there has been churches wanting to open overnight. And for me, it was such a theological crisis. How do they understand the Eucharist? With all the social distancing and the COVID protocol, and they announced even in the papers, some dioceses, they want to increase the number of masses, okay, so that they can accommodate more people. What are we trying to say to the world? What are we trying to say to what, the whole junk of church whom we call the Christian faithful? And where, as I say, women's voice do not come to the making of these decisions. And they are the ones, and in the churches, they announced they will be strictly taking people above 10, below 65, because that is the government norm. Okay, but these people who go to church, they come back to homes where they have the elderly, where they have the children. So what are we trying to sell through this? For me, it's, this is a crisis which calls for a very serious rethinking on what it means to be church. How do we understand spirituality? So in our Indian Women Theologians Forum, in our Indian Christian women's movement, where we have women with feminist theological sensibilities, on the one hand we suffer, okay, we feel suffocated. But on the other hand, we feel time is ripe to say enough is enough to clericalism. Okay, we have to, women, we can't. So for me, COVID-19 is giving us, this pandemic is telling us, wake up. Women, do your part. Create the church. We have to create that. I'm not for this, ordination of women where you're trying to do some patchwork, I feel. I don't know how it will resolve. Okay? Because I really feel this clericalized hierarchical system, for me, it is not Christian. Why do I want to be part of a system which is not Christian? For me, it is purely Levitical, against which Jesus Christ fought hard, and the consequence was his death, and we have not learned. So what do we do? For me, these are unresolved questions which have come very, sharply to my consciousness. And I really feel we have to do something. We have to join hands, not just Indian women, women of the world, okay? Women with feminist theological sensibilities. And here we are Catholic women speaking, okay? Can we Catholic women think aloud? Can we create platforms where we want to say, what is the church? Is the church becoming a home for us? Or is it becoming a supermarket where we buy, we consume, these religious products? What is women's agency in this church? Just, I don't understand. I told my mother, I don't belong here.
You are the kind of voice we cry out to hear, and I long to reach out and join hands with you physically, but we are joining hands. These interviews that I'm doing, we're online, we're doing all sorts of things. You spoke earlier about the meaning of home. And I think for many women, they've discovered that the home has become their liturgical space. They've become priests of the household. They've become the Eucharistic ministers of their domestic groupings, families, or whoever they share space with, or of their own liturgical space when they live alone. So a lot is happening, and you express in this interview so eloquently and seamlessly what I feel to be a tremendous creative energy among women in different religions and different groupings. So thank you dear Kocherani. And that was, you know, a cry to women around the world. This is our moment. This is our time to join hands and see how much is at stake and what an opportunity we have. So thank you so
Thank you.
much for that
Thank you,
time
Kia.
together.